Hackney, East London, the court has heard a harrowing case involving 28-year-old Gogor Lewis Tape. He killed his girlfriend, 25-year-old Kennedi Westgarth, a brogue, who was also the mother of their 2-year-old daughter. Last April, Tape asked Kennedi for a lift. While she sat in the driver's seat of her Vauxhall, he launched a violent attack that lasted at least 8 minutes. He strangled and struck her until she lost her life. Instead of calling for help, Tape placed her body in the passenger seat and drove around for nearly 2
Starmer faces pressure. Bereaved mother's 5-word demand shakes Westminster. Before we dive into this absolutely staggering story that's gripping the nation, do hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because at British News Blog, we're bringing you the political stories Westminster doesn't always want you to hear. Right? Let's get into this. Look me in the eye. 5 words. That's all Linda Westcar is asking of the Prime Minister. 5 simple words that carry the weight of unspeakable grief, systemic failure, and a justice system that appears to have lost its moral compass entirely. And frankly, if Sir Keir Starmer can't find the time to grant this devastated mother that much, we need to be asking some very serious questions about what kind of government we're living under. The story begins with tragedy, the kind that shakes you to your core. October 14th, 2024. 25-year-old Kennedi Westgarth, a young mother, was brutally strangled to death by Gogor Lewis Tape, a 28-year-old acquaintance, outside his South London flat. The details are harrowing. Tape, plagued by undiagnosed schizophrenia, persecutory delusions, and a documented history of heavy cannabis use stretching back to 2014, crushed Kennedi's windpipe in a frenzied assault inside her own car. But here's where it gets even more disturbing. He didn't stop there. He propped her lifeless body upright in the passenger seat and drove through London for nearly 2 hours. 2 hours. He stopped to buy cigarettes. Cigarettes. As if he'd just completed an errand. Then he sent a text from her phone to a friend, creating a macabre charade before confessing to police 6 hours later. Now, you'd think, surely, that would warrant a murder conviction. But no. July 2025, at the Old Bailey, Tape was convicted of manslaughter on grounds of diminished responsibility. Judge Freya Newbury imposed an indefinite hospital order under Sections 37 and 41 of the Mental Health Act, detaining him in a secure psychiatric unit. Not a prison, a hospital, which means, legally speaking, Tape is a patient, not a prisoner. And here's where this story takes a turn that will absolutely enrage you. As a patient, Gogor Lewis Tape qualifies for up to £400 monthly in universal credit. That's right, the man who strangled a young mother to death, who drove around with her cops for entertainment, is receiving taxpayer money. Tax-free money, mind you, since the state already covers his care, his board, and his medical needs. Campaigners have done the maths. Over 3 to 4 years. That could amount to nearly £96,000. Let that sink in for a moment. £96,000 of public money going to a killer while the victim's family struggles to survive. If you're feeling that rising sense of injustice right now, make sure you're subscribed because we're following this story as it develops. And trust me, you'll want to stay updated on what happens next. Linda Westcar, Kennedi's mother, is now the sole carer for her orphaned granddaughter. She's fighting for basic support while the man who destroyed her family accumulates benefits. The bitter irony isn't lost on anyone. Kennedi's brother, Leon Westcar, put it devastatingly well. How can it be right that a convicted killer can receive benefits while the victim's family is left struggling to survive, emotionally and financially? This cannot be acceptable in any just or moral society. He's absolutely right. It's barbaric. It's morally bankrupt. And it exposes a gaping wound in our justice system that successive governments have simply ignored. On October 20th, the family secured meetings with Jess Phillips MP, Minister for Safeguarding and Violence Against Women and Girls, and Alex Davies-Jones MP, Parliamentary Undersecretary of State for Victims and Tackling Violence Against Women and Girls. The discussions covered the family's painful experiences within the justice system and their demands for reform. They are pushing for Jade's Law, legislation that would bar killers of pregnant women from having parental rights. They are also demanding an urgent review of the benefits policy that allows offenders in hospital detention to receive universal credit. A second meeting followed with Pat McFadden MP, Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, where the family reiterated their call for immediate policy change. Now, to his credit, Mr. McFadden seemed genuinely moved. He said he was very touched to meet Linda and Leon, praising their great bravery and dignity. He asked officials to come back very quickly on possible changes to stop entitlements for offenders detained in psychiatric hospitals. That's encouraging. But here's the problem. Words are cheap in Westminster. We've heard promises before. We've seen ministers express sympathy before. What we need is action, and we need it now. Linda Westcar echoed this sentiment perfectly. She thanked the ministers but made it abundantly clear that sympathetic words aren't enough. These meetings were a step towards being heard, she said, but my daughter's killing deserves more than sympathetic words. It demands action. She's calling for true systematic change, including preventing killers sent to hospitals from receiving benefits and the implementation of Jade's Law. Most crucially, she's demanding that victims be prioritized in the justice system, a concept that should be self-evident but apparently needs spelling out to our political leaders. Here's where it gets particularly damning for number 10. 6 weeks ago, Linda Westcar submitted a letter to Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer detailing the multiple failures in Kennedi's case. The delayed interventions for tape despite his documented mental health warnings since 2014. The perceived leniency in sentencing. The systematic abandonment of victims' families. And what response has she received from the Prime Minister's office? Silence. Absolute silence. Not even the courtesy of an acknowledgement. That's why she's now publicly calling on Sir Keir Starmer and Lord Chancellor Shabana Mahmood to meet with her. That's why she's asking them to look her in the eye and commit to real change so no other family has to endure what Hayes has. If you're as outraged by this as I am, hit that like button and share this video, because stories like this need to be heard, and pressure needs to be maintained on those in power. The statistics paint an even grimmer picture of how widespread this problem is. Government figures reveal that 2,745 serious offenders, including murderers, are currently receiving benefits while detained in psychiatric hospitals. 2,745. That's not a handful of edge cases. That's systemic policy. Victims advocate Julian Hendy called the arrangement one that beggars belief, and he's not wrong. He suggested the money could instead support traumatized families and yield millions in treasury savings. It's common sense. It's moral. It's humane. So why hasn't it been done? This case exposes fundamental cracks in Britain's justice framework that go well beyond one tragic murder. There's the mental health oversight failure. Tape had been flagged repeatedly since 2014 for his cannabis use and deteriorating mental state, yet nothing substantive was done to prevent tragedy. There's the sentencing disparity. Manslaughter on grounds of diminished responsibility in a case this brutal raises serious questions about how justice is actually being served. And there's the victim support vacuum. Families like the Westcars are left emotionally and financially devastated while the system rewards perpetrators with taxpayer-funded comfort. The family's advocacy has spurred demands for a comprehensive Victims' Bill of Rights, and they're gaining cross-party MP support. That's significant. When MPs from across the political spectrum start agreeing on something, it usually means the issue is so glaringly obvious that ignoring it becomes politically untenable. Labour's post-election commitments to safeguarding reforms are supposedly in progress, but the Westcars case underscores just how urgent implementation needs to be. We're not talking about 5-year plans or gradual improvements. We're talking about immediate, decisive action to correct a moral travesty. Leon Westcar made another point that cuts to the heart of public confidence in justice. He said tape accumulates a significant amount of taxpayers' money, and that his patient status has effectively erased the crime's brutality, leaving the family with the painful belief that he has effectively got away with murder. That phrase, got away with murder, is devastating because, from the family's perspective and frankly from any reasonable person's perspective, it's accurate. Yes, he's detained. Yes, he's in a secure unit. But he's comfortable. He's provided for. He's receiving money. Meanwhile, Kennedi is dead, her daughter is without a mother, and her family is fighting for scraps. The ministerial meetings are progress, certainly. They represent a crack in the wall of bureaucratic indifference. But Linda Westcar is right. They are insufficient without higher-level engagement. The Prime Minister and Lord Chancellor need to step up. They need to meet this family. They need to look Linda Westcar in the eye and explain why her daughter's killer is being bankrolled by the very system that failed to protect Kennedy in the first place. And they need to commit, publicly, unequivocally, to changing these unconscionable policies. Make sure you're subscribed to British News Blog because we'll be tracking every development in this story. And you can bet we'll be holding the government's feet to the fire on their promises. What we're witnessing here is a test of this government's character. Labour came into power promising to be different, to prioritise victims, to rebuild trust in institutions. Well, here's their chance. Linda Westcar isn't asking for revenge. She's not demanding vigilante justice. She's asking for basic dignity, for accountability, for a system that doesn't reward murderers while abandoning victims. If Sir Keir Starmer can't deliver on that, if he can't even find the time to meet with this grieving mother, then what exactly is the point of all those manifesto promises? The broader implications are chilling. If this is how the justice system treats the family of a murdered young mother, what message does that send to other victims? What confidence can anyone have that justice will be served if tragedy strikes? The Westcars are fighting not just for themselves, but for every family who might face similar horror in the future. They are demanding systemic reform because they understand that their personal tragedy is symptomatic of structural rot. There's also the uncomfortable conversation about mental health, criminal responsibility, and public safety that this case forces us to confront. Nobody is suggesting that mental illness isn't real or that it doesn't affect behavior. But when someone with a documented decade-long history of concerning mental health issues and drug abuse is left to deteriorate until they commit murder, that's a failure of the system. When that same person then receives preferential treatment in the form of taxpayer-funded benefits while their victim's family suffers, that's not compassion. That's perverse incentive. We can have sympathy for mental health struggles while still demanding accountability and justice for victims. The silence from Number 10 speaks volumes. 6 weeks without even an acknowledgement of Linda's letter isn't an oversight. It's a choice. It suggests that either the Prime Minister's office doesn't view this as a priority, or they are hoping the story will fade from public attention. Well, here's the thing. It won't. Not while families like the Westcars are willing to fight. Not while journalists and content creators continue to amplify their voices. And certainly not while the public remains justifiably outraged at the grotesque unfairness of it all. So here we are, a mother asking for 5 words worth of respect, look me in the eye, and a Prime Minister who apparently can't spare the time. A killer receiving nearly £100,000 in benefits while his victim's orphan child struggles. A justice system that seems designed to protect perpetrators more than victims. If this doesn't warrant immediate government action, what does? This is exactly why you need to stay subscribed to British News Blog. We're not letting this story disappear into the Westminster fog. We'll be following every meeting, every policy announcement, every promise made and broken. Because Linda Westcar and her family deserve more than empty sympathy. They deserve action. They deserve justice. And they deserve a Prime Minister brave enough to look them in the eye and commit to genuine change. Will Sir Keir Starmer rise to that challenge? We'll be watching. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and we'll see you in the next one.